Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are talk about transitivity, especially transitivity process in functional English grammar. The member of our group is in the video description. And okay, we started. Okay, the first is material process. Material process is a process of doing or physical action. There are two types of material process, happening and doing. Happening material process is characterized by the absence of goal, while doing material process is characterized with the presence of goal. Participant in material process involves actor, goal, beneficiary, and range. So here the example of material process doing and happening. The first is doing, or you can call it as transitive. There is a sentence: John is cooking pizza. John as actor is cooking as process, and then pizza as goal. While in happening or in transitive, there is no goal, just actor and process. So John is cooking. John as actor and is cooking as process. The other words or the other material process in doing is creative or making goal, like create, make, build, develop, and etc. And then dispositive or affecting goal, like send, throw, straw, pour, dissolve, and etc. And in happening, there is like move, fall, rise, come, go, soften, harden, melt, and etc. Okay, the next we are gonna talk about material process in passive and material process with dispositive recipient. The first is material process in passive. There is a sentence: the pizza is being cooked by John. The pizza as goal is being cooked, is process, and by John is actor. While in actionless passive, there is no actor, just goal and process. So the pizza as goal and is being cooked is process. The second is material process with dispositive or recipient, such as give, hand, throw, deliver, send, and etc. The first is active sentence: John sent Meg a table. John as actor, send as process, Meg as recipient, a table as goal. And then in the second example, John sent a table to Meg. John as actor, send as process, a table as goal, to Meg as recipient. So although there is a change in the sentence, like active to passive, but there is no change in the structure.
Okay, the next one is material process. Material process with dispositive, and the example is silent, buy, make, get, do, cook, bake, and others. And then the example is John bake, make pizza, and then John is actor, bake is the process, make is silent, and pizza is cool. And then John baked pizza for Meg. And in this sentence, John is actor, bake is process, pizza is cool, and for Meg is silent. And then the next one is material process with range. Range can be an extension of process and a scope of process, and then range is not an entity. The example is John play a guitar or John sang a song. And then John is actor, play is process, and then sang is process, and the guitar and song is range or extension of process. And then the next one example is John climbed the hill. John is actor, climb is process, and then the hill is range or scope of process. The next one is content of communication. You can see on the screen there is a table that contains example of the content of the communication. So I will give you some example. Number one is the type of the process is material, and then the participants are called as agent or actor. The process are doing or intransitive, and then the example is live. Number two, the type of process is material, and then the participants are called as agent or creator, and then the process is doing or transitive. For the example is hit, kick, make, build, write, play, and sing. Then the participant call as affected, call, range, and the circumstance is locative or goal. And then the example number 4 is the type of the process is material, and then the participant is affected. And then the process is happening or intransitive. And for example is sleep or collapse. Then the participant is no one, and then the last one is circumstance is locative. Okay, that is the example of the content communication. You can see and read the example on the screen. And then the next slide is behavioral process. Process of behaving, there are two types, verbal behavior and mental behavior. The example of verbal behavior are talk, chat, converse, speak, call, discuss, abuse, flatter, and others. And for the participant is behavior, receiver, and verbiage. And the next is mental behavior. For the example are look at, watch, listen to, experience, survey, smile, laugh, cry, memorize, concentrate, mediate, and others. And for the participant include behavior and phenomenon.
Yeah, okay. So the example of the behavioral process is like in these sentences. The first one, John talked to her about the task. John is the behavior, talked is the process, to her is the receiver, and about the task is the verbiage. And then they chatted each other about the game. They is the behavior, chatted is the process, and each other as the receiver, and about the game as the verbiage. And then he looked at the carving. He as the behavior, looked at as the process, the carving as the phenomenon. And then he studied the opera. He as the behavior, studied as the process, and the opera as the phenomenon. The next process is the mental process. So The mental process is a process of sensing, perception, cognition, and affection. The perception consists of perceive, see, notice, observe, feel, smell, taste, hear, etc. And then the cognition consists of assume, believe, conclude, consider, discover, doubt, etc. And then the affection consists of enjoy, relish, regret, like, fear, dread, favor, love, prefer, etc. And then the participants are the sensor and the phenomenon. Then there are three types of phenomena. They are micro, thing, or macro, thing with embedded process, and meta, or an idea. Okay, so there are some examples of mental process. Yeah, the first one is John likes pizza. Pizza here is as the micro phenomenon. So John is the sensor, likes as the process, and pizza as the micro phenomenon. And then John saw him selecting a shirt. Selecting a shirt is a macro phenomenon. So John is the sensor, so as the process, and him selecting a shirt as the macro phenomenon. And then John wondered why he was chosen. Why he was chosen is the meta phenomenon. So John is the sensor, wondered is the process, and why he was chosen is the meta phenomenon. So to test, the first one is at the moment of speaking is simple. For example, no one sees him, or no one is seeing him. And then the bi-directional. I fear that man, or that man frightens me. I like it. It pleases me. I don't understand it, or it puzzles me. And then grieve or sadden, believe or convince, forget or escape, recall on or remind. And then the mental process does not work with a question, what did he do? Yeah, so what did he do? He liked the man.
Talk about content of communication. There are two types of content of communication. There are behavioral and also mental. The first type is behavioral. The participants are called as experiencer or sensor. For example, volitional. The process are behavioral. For the example is watch. Then the participant is called as phenomenon. The second participant is experiencer, for example, non-volitional. And the process is perception, for example, see, hear, and the participant called as phenomenon. The third example of the types of behavioral is experiencer or sensor. The process is cognition. For example, is a now, doubt, and the participant is called as phenomenon. The second types of content of communication is mental. The participants is called as experiencer. For example, is recipient. The process is affectivity for the participant called as phenomenon. The second participant of mental is phenomenon with the process called as affectivity, and the participant is experiencer, for the example recipient. The third participant of mental types is experiencer with the process is desideration, for example wish, want, and then the participant is called as phenomenon, for example is unreal. And about verbal process, that we usually call it as a process of saying. The participants such as sayer, verbiage, and receiver. For example, John asked him a question. John here as sayer and ask as process, him as receiver, a question as a verbiage. And the second example is John told them a story. John here as sayer, told as process, them as receiver, a story as verbiage. The third example is John said them that he is sick. John here as sayer, said as process, them as receiver, and he is sick as verbiage. And then for existential process, that we usually describe this process as a process of projecting that something exists. A participant such as exists, for example, is there is a book on the table. Is as a process, a book as existent on the table as circumstance. And the second example is Ebola existed in Ethiopia. Ebola here as existent, existed here as process. In Ethiopia, here as circumstance.
Content of communication 5 to 6. The types, there are two, which are verbal and existential. Verbal, participant, sayer, process verbal, including say, repeat, tell, and report. And the participant is said. The next one is sayer, the process verbal, like say, tell, repeat, and also report, but the participant is recipient and said clause. The next one, existential, the participant is there. The process existential like be, stand, lie, stretch, hang, remain, occur, follow, repeat, appear, emerge, and loom. And the participant is existent. The circumstance is locative. The next, there, the process existential, the participant existent, and the attributive current attributive. Relational process. There are two types of relational process, which are attributive and identifying. Attributive relational process is a process of giving attribute to a thing. The participants are carrier and attribute. The types of attributive here, there are appearance such as be, seem, appear, sound, look, taste, smell, feel, and etc. And the phase such as become, remain, turn, grow, run, come, keep, stay, and etc. And the next one, the measure such as width, a cost, measure, number. For example, here is the examples of sentence. The first one, he is at home. The second one, she becomes an engineer. The third one, they grew wild. And the fourth one, it cost 5,000 rupiah. He, she, they, and it is the carrier. Meanwhile, is, becomes, grew, and cost is the process. And at home, an engineer, wild, and 5,000 rupiah is the attribute. There is another example with the word have. The sentence, he has a piano. He is the carrier, has is the process, and a piano is the attribute. Another example, to test. Ben is a farmer, which means a farmer is Ben. Attributive with conflated process and attribute like matter, suffice, differ, dominate, spell, and pong. It matters, it suffices, they dominate. It and they is the carrier, and meanwhile the matters, suffices, and dominate is the process or attribute.
The next is identifying relational process. Identifying relational process is a process of giving a value to a thing. The names of participants are token and value. There are many types of identifying relational process. The first is be. The example are is, are, was, were, and been. The next type is equality. The example are equal, add up to, make, come out as or add, amount to, translate, render, paraphrase, reformulate, and transliterate. The next type is signification. The example are signify, expound, code, encode, express, realize, spell, write, transcribe, read, mean, denote, connote, define, call, and name. The next type is representation. The example are symbolize, represent, stand for, refer to, imply, index, express, reflect, and personality. Next is indication. The example are indicate, suggest, betoken, connote, smack of, evoke, and reveal. And the last type is role. The example are play or act as, function, portray, typify, and personify. Okay, now let's look to the first table. It is the example of relational process. The first is Ben is the farmer. Ben here as a token. Is the process and the farmer as a value. The next example is this reflects the crisis. This as a token, reflects is a process, and the crisis as a value. It is to test first, reversible. Second, token takes subject in active. And third, token is more concrete than value. Okay, now look at the second table. It is the example if the value is in front of the process and token. The first example is the farmer is Ben. The farmer here as a value. Is process and Ben as a token. The second example is the crisis is reflected by this. The crisis as a value, is reflected is a process, and by this as a token. Okay, that's all from our group. Thanks for your nice attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.